Ripped off, out of pocket, short-changed. No one likes getting a bad deal.
But knowing who to trust can be tough.
I work hard for my holidays. To suddenly have that taken away, it's heartbreaking.
So when your money is under threat and you think you've lost out, Rip Off Britain is here to help.
We'll be investigating the companies that you say are letting you down.
I'm not going to be able to go on this holiday, even though it was totally not my fault.
And we're taking on the scammers who are causing heartache and misery.
We had lost all our money and we weren't going to be going on holiday.
So whether it's a mistake that's left you out of pocket or a blatant rip-off, we're here to help you find out what you can do about it.
This is Rip Off Britain.
Hello and welcome to another special holidays episode of Rip Off Britain. Now, whether you're itching to book that blissful beach break or a sightseeing city stopover, we're here to make sure that whatever you do, it goes without a hitch.
In our sites today, from airlines to tour operators, they're supposed to make getting to your destination easy. But perhaps the firms in today's programme didn't really get that memo.
Well, coming up, if you're tempted by promises of a cut-price deposit in order to secure your next holiday, be very, very careful. It could have a seriously expensive sting in the tail if you end up having to cancel.
On the 24th of January, £419.30. On the 25th of January, £314.47. And on the 27th of January, £973.44. So a total of £1,707.21 that I just did not expect to be going out of my account.
Plus, the airlines that are riding roughshod over the rules around paying compensation for delayed flights. Now, the aviation regulator is going to be here in the studio to explain just how it is going to make sure that you get every penny you're owed.
And ever heard of an international driving permit? Me neither. In our advice clinic today, we're meeting a man whose US fly-drive holiday very nearly didn't happen because of confusion about whether he needed a permit or not. Travel expert Rob Staines will be here to help him and to reveal when you do and you don't need a special form to drive abroad.
But first, when you're planning your holiday, are you one of those meticulous planners or do you just turn up and let's see what happens type? Well, I definitely fall into the former. I really want to feel that, give or take, everything's in order and I can look forward to my holiday. So what about you girls?
I think I probably come into the latter category, but that's all I'll say about it.
I
could have guessed that one.
We all knew you'd say that. I must admit I'm a planner, but I do like to leave a margin to deal with the unexpected.
Just in case.
Just in case, yes.
You never know who you might meet on the way.
Exactly.
Well, so many of you tell us that you plan your trip right down to the minute with a packed schedule from the moment the plane lands on the tarmac. But for the people in the next film, being organised didn't make a jot of difference because, thanks to reasons entirely out of their control, they couldn't even step on the plane. Why? Because there just wasn't enough room.
Gets it right.
Wow. When the Archer family from Pudsey in West Yorkshire get together, it takes a lot of organisation.
My husband Dave, my daughters Aaliyah, Paris and Teddy, my grandson Romeo, my parents Andrew and Robin, my daughter's partner Kenny and his son Luca. Family time is really important to me. We like to do lots of things together. So we decided we wanted to book a holiday because we'd not had one since COVID. So we thought it'd be a lovely chance for all the family to get together.
And with Gemma in charge of the clan, in June 2022, she booked a 7-night getaway in the Algarve for all 10 of them.
I've always booked package holidays because it's like the simplest and safest way to do it. I'm guaranteed my flights, I can book my seats together, we got the accommodation. It takes some of the stress out of it. We came across EasyJet Holidays and we found a really reasonable price for the holiday.
At just over £4,000, it looked perfect.
We were really excited. We were with the children, 5 sleeps to go, 4 sleeps to go. Shopping for the holiday clothes and showing the children the pictures of where we were going to be staying. We were really looking forward to it.
And in April 2023, they were in the same high spirits when they arrived at Liverpool John Lennon Airport to check in for their flight to Faro. To help things run smoothly, Especially with 3 young children and Andrea's mobility problems, they'd paid extra so the whole gang could sit together.
My mum, my dad and my middle daughter, Paris, got airport assistance because of my mum's mobility. So they went straight to the front.
But it was a different story for the remaining 7 members of the family.
So we get in the queue and we get to the front desk, and then all of a sudden he said, unfortunately, you can't get on the flight. We've got no space for you.
The plane that was due to make the trip had been swapped for a smaller one, meaning there were no seats for Gemma, Dave, Aaliyah, Romeo, Teddy, Kenny and Luca.
Honestly, I fell apart. I burst into tears. Burst into tears. We'd saved up for months. You know, Teddy, she was 5. She didn't understand why this man at the desk was saying, I'm sorry, you can't go on holiday today. I was in tears. I didn't know what we could do.
Meanwhile, Andrea, Robin and Paris were boarding the plane.
There was this knot at the pit of my stomach thinking, what on earth's going to happen? Are we going to be on our family holiday on our own? Paris obviously was in tears all the time. It was horrendous.
You can't actually really find words to describe the feeling that you felt when knowing half of your family's not even there on the flight. It was like a holiday from hell, really.
EasyJet Holidays put Gemma and the others into a hotel for the night, offered compensation and told them they could fly to Faro the following day. But, incredibly, the next day there wasn't enough room on that second flight.
That was absolute devastation and complete turmoil because we were now stuck in Liverpool with no flight. It was a huge worry that we might not actually get there.
The family decided that the 4 seats that were available should go to eldest daughter Aaliyah and the 3 children.
It was horrendous. Having the responsibility of watching 3 children on my own, I had to rely on the other passengers to give their seats up so we could all be sat together.
Gemma, her husband Dave and Aaliyah's partner Kenny were booked onto a flight that evening from Manchester, but in yet another twist, that flight was later cancelled and they were put into a taxi and driven 5 hours to catch a flight from Gatwick.
It was non-stop stress. Every emotion you can feel, you experience. It was Monday morning when we got there, but we were relieved to finally land in Portugal to be reunited with his family. We were all shattered, but after Monday, Tuesday really we started to enjoy that holiday, and we did have a great family holiday like planned. It just started off quite bumpy.
Gemma and her family were victims of something called down-gauging, which is when one aircraft is replaced with a smaller one. But that's not the only reason that paying passengers might be bumped from the flight they'd been booked onto. For Danny Panzid from London, it was because EasyJet had sold more tickets than there were seats on the plane.
Glittery cat.
Danny and her 2 daughters, Jasmine and India, were jetting off to Venice to celebrate Jasmine's 30th birthday.
Oh, no!
Very nice.
The same day we landed, we were going to go to a masquerade ball, which was very grand, and I'd got everything organised for it, capes and gowns and masks and a big meal, and it was going to be amazing.
But at the airport, there were some extra surprises in store.
The lady from EasyJet said, unfortunately, the flight has been overbooked. But initially, I just thought, oh, there's no seats, so what are they going to do? They can't possibly ruin my whole holiday.
Then the reality hit.
They said, oh no, you can't fly until tomorrow. And I was saying, but that's impossible. I'm sorry, I've paid a fortune. All of the costumes and the whole surprise for Jasmine's birthday. And I was just so upset. I was in tears.
They would never make the masquerade ball. Danny, who was using a wheelchair, says all the disruption to their journey made it especially uncomfortable. After a night in an airport hotel, there was more bad news. The next flight was also oversubscribed, with only 2 seats available for the trio, and the alternatives just weren't viable.
They basically said that the third person could get a flight to Milan and then take a train. My mum was in a wheelchair, so neither of us wanted to leave her.
It was awful when you see your daughter in tears, and she's not the type to cry. So even I'm getting upset now. Yeah, it was horrible, and we were asking for somebody to come and help us, and nobody took us seriously.
The family was finally able to get a flight together later that evening, landing in Venice on day 2 of their 4-day trip, and long after the masquerade ball was over.
It was devastating, really. The main part of the holiday was ruined.
But they say it's the unfairness of the overbooking policy that's particularly hard to swallow.
I still can't really believe that you can pay for something, and when you come to them handing it over to you, they say, "I'm sorry, I haven't got it."
But selling more tickets than there are seats on a plane isn't uncommon. We asked some of the biggest airlines operating in the UK for their overbooking policies. Along with EasyJet, British Airways, Virgin Atlantic and Wizz Air all told us they do overbook, usually to minimise the number of empty seats when people don't turn up for their flights. But while it is an industry-wide practice, some airlines do buck the trend. Jet2 and Ryanair both told us their policies are not to overbook. The risk of being bumped off your flight might be low, but Gemma and her family feel they should have been a long way down the list of candidates because they'd booked a package holiday, were travelling with children, and had booked extra assistance for Andrea's mobility needs.
It's devastating news to families when you've worked hard to pay for that holiday and then suddenly it's taken away from you. Airlines don't think about the people, actual families. You know, you're building the excitement up with your children at home, so to be told you can't go on this holiday, it's wrong.
When we spoke to EasyJet about Gemma's case, it told us that it was very sorry that the family were unable to travel on their original flight to Faro due to a technical fault with the aircraft and the fact that the replacement plane had fewer seats than the original.
EasyJet said it was unfortunate that one of the replacement flights it provided was then cancelled due to industrial action, but it stressed that it takes its responsibilities to passengers seriously. And in this case, it provided compensation, refunded the family's pre-booked seating, and the cost of the night of accommodation they missed. EasyJet also offered a gesture of goodwill, which the family chose not to accept.
As for Danny's case, EasyJet told us that it is talking to its ground handling partner at London Gatwick and its customer support team so that it can understand why the family did not receive the service that they should have done. EasyJet also says it will ensure that they receive the compensation they're due and has offered a gesture of goodwill in order to apologise for their experience.
Well, whether it's a case of overbooking or so-called down-gauging, no one wants to be bumped from a flight. But with me here now is a man who's been on more than his fair share of flights, Simon Calder. How many times have you been bumped?
Well, only once have I been told you're not travelling. A couple of other times I've very eagerly grabbed the compensation that they've been offering for me to travel on a later flight.
And may I inquire why they didn't want you on the flight? Was it the way you are, or was it some other...
No, airlines routinely, many of them will routinely sell more tickets than there are seats on the plane. And when it's carried out well, overbooking is immensely benign. It means, because typically 5% of people don't show up for a flight, you will get, for example, the chance to travel even though a full flight is officially full. It also means that planes fly with more of their seat occupied, which is better for the environment. And once an overbooking goes wrong, and everybody does turn up, the airlines have a duty, legally and morally, to do the right thing and just start looking for volunteers and start offering people large slices of money.
Well, the cases in the film we saw were both on EasyJet flights, but as you've just said, every airline has to deny boarding at some stage. So what's the pecking order?
The first thing that any airline should do is ask for volunteers. But there is a kind of informal pecking order. So, for example, the first people to get turned away are going to be anybody who arrives even 1 minute late at the departure gate. Otherwise, if you're travelling, for example, via a hub such as Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Paris, and you've got a connecting flight, very unlikely they'll move you off that flight because they will want you to go on the long haul trip. Then you will find that people who are members of frequent flyer clubs, they might get special recognition and not be turned away. But ultimately, it really ought to be people with mobility issues who should be prioritised for not being offloaded and just flying on the trip that they booked. There's also the issue, which something seems to have gone wrong here, where if you're on a package holiday, then the company will normally prioritise you because EasyJet Holidays doesn't want to lose all the money, so it'd much rather EasyJet flew its customers as booked.
And presumably families with kids are high up the list of people they'd want to keep together, wouldn't they?
You would think so, but clearly something went horribly wrong here.
Exactly, as we saw. Well, if this does happen to you, can you negotiate a price?
Well, if you are a volunteer, yes, it's all one big happy negotiation. And they might say, Julia, 300 quid if you're prepared to fly tomorrow. And you'll say, well, I'll do that, but you've got to book me a nice hotel and get my dinner and then upgrade me. But if you are in the position of being an involuntary offloadee and you're denied boarding, then it's very clear what the passenger rights are. Assuming you get to your destination more than 2 hours late, then for a short haul flight, you'll get £220. That goes up in stages, 350 up to £520 if it is a long flight and you are delayed getting there by a significant number of hours.
So how can you avoid becoming a victim of overbooking?
Well, there shouldn't be any actual victims, but one way to work is to go with an airline such as Jet2 or Ryanair, which do not overbook, and that would eliminate pretty much the risk. Alternatively, well, just make sure that you understand your rights. And at the departure gate, if they are saying, oh, we got 1 or 2 more people, because that's what EasyJet say they do, just say, well, that's fine. You've now got to ask everybody here how much money they are prepared to accept in order to travel on a later flight. It's always the airline's problem if they are overbooking, not yours.
Very firmly stated, Simon. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Time now for our advice clinic, where we put the brains of the nation's best consumer rights experts to work on your problems. Well, in the advice clinic with me today, we have travel expert Rob Stain. So nice to see you, Rob. And we're going to help Carlo Gaglione, who's joining us from the line from London. Welcome, Carlo.
Thank you.
Now, as I understand it, Carlo, you went to Los Angeles to visit your son and you had problems with car hire, which a lot of us do. So what happened in your case?
When I went to retrieve the car from Hertz Rent-A-Car in Lakewood, I was refused, said that I did not have an international driving permit.
And who had you booked that through?
I booked through Expedia.com before I went in May 2023.
See, I'm not familiar with this international permit thing, are you?
Yeah, so an international permit is not a license to drive. So it basically sits next to your license and acts as a translation when we are driving in a foreign country. Now, this is especially helpful when you are hiring a car, for example, or if you get stopped by authorities when driving in a country where English is not their first language. Now, some car hire companies insist that you have one, some just recommend it, and others, they don't need one at all. But Carlo, what I would like to know is, did Expedia or Hertz tell you that you needed an international driving permit?
No. Even 2 days before the picking up of the car, Hertz sent me a reminder with driver license, credit cards, and passport. That's all.
And I'm thinking to myself, there you are in Los Angeles, looking forward to seeing your son, thousands of miles away. You need a car in Los Angeles just to get around. So how were you feeling at that time?
Well, hopeful, because my wife, she cannot walk freely. So we had to take a minicab to go to my son, which cost me $92, and then rebooked and picking up the car next day with the different plans that we were meant to be doing in the first place.
So, Carlo, in total, how much did this end up costing you?
Or £244 extra than normally would have done.
Well, actually, Gloria, it seems like there has been a massive mistake made here by Hertz, because the only time you need an international driver's permit when you are driving in the USA is if you have an old-style paper copy and you actually need to make a claim on your insurance for an accident. Now, as per the terms on Hertz's website, they say they recommend having an international driving permit, but that is only if your licence is in a language other than English.
To avoid anything like this happening, would you advise, for example, to have one of those anyway?
You don't necessarily need one in lots of countries, but if you do want to find out about that, you can go to the gov.uk website, which will have a full list of the places that do and don't require you to have one. So, for instance, you will need one in the likes of New Zealand, Jamaica, and Canada, for example. And there are 3 different types of permits, and it will also tell you which one is required for the destination that you're visiting. One thing I will say is that they are actually really easy to obtain. All you've got to do is pop down to your local post office. They cost a mere £5.50 and they last several validity periods from 12 months to 3 years, and it's as easy as that.
Well, when Carlo came to us, we of course picked up things with Expedia and Hertz. And Hertz was very quick to accept that Carlo didn't need an international driver's permit, adding that it's apologised to Carlo and reimbursed the expenses he incurred. Meanwhile, Expedia refunded the £178 that Carlo had paid to book the car in light of his experience. Well, Carlo, we wish you a much safer time when you go off to see your son. Thank you very much. And to you, Rob, as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. Have a good day.
Now, we get so many emails every week from people who are unhappy with the behaviour of their tour operator or travel agent. But there are 2 words that crop up remarkably frequently, and they are single supplement, which is an extra charge that some travellers face for travelling on their own. There's no 2 ways about it. People who holiday on their own say they always seem to get a bad deal.
And one of those people who got in touch is Hilary Manning from Milton Keynes. She emailed to say that she went on her first holiday as a solo traveller last year, and she paid the single supplement without complaint because she understands that a room does have to be paid for, whether it's for 1 or 2 people. What Hilary says she didn't expect, though, was to be put in the poorest rooms in the hotel. They're often designed for just 1 person, but she had actually booked a double.
Christine Ayling agrees. She emailed to say that she paid £100 single supplement for a 5-day holiday, and she was put in an inferior room opposite the lift mechanism and just couldn't sleep. She says, why are we getting ripped off? Simply because we're single.
Very good question. Well, Alison Stead on email calls it daylight robbery and the continuous poor treatment of single travellers. And she asks this: when is the market going to wake up to the fact that there are more and more people wanting to travel on their own?
Well, I very often travel on my own, and what I've found is because of the amount that they can charge you for single supplement, I just book a double room for single occupancy. It can work out slightly more expensive, but actually it tends to be pretty good value for money because the single supplement would probably be even more.
And that's your treat.
And that's my treat.
Well, we want to hear from fellow solo travellers. If you've also suffered a ordeal when it feels like you're paying more than anybody else, or indeed you find a company that doesn't make you feel like, well, you're being taken for a ride, do let us know. ripoffbritain@bbc.co.uk is our email address, or you'll find us always on Facebook by searching BBC Ripoff Britain.
And we also love getting your letters. The address for those is Ripoff Britain, BBC Media City UK, Salford, M52BH. And however you get in touch, please do include your phone number so someone on the team can give you a call.
Now, if you're a saver, someone who puts just a little bit away for your holiday every month, or maybe you're a forward planner, one who likes securing your trip way in advance, or on the other hand, perhaps you're both, well then any holiday firm offering a cut price deposit to secure your next getaway is certainly speaking your language. But as the people we're about to meet discovered to their great surprise, if subsequently your plans need to change, that low deposit can come at a very high price.
crisp autumn leaves, bright skies, and the peace of a gorgeous woodland walk. Chris Scott from York just loves the outdoors.
I do enjoy walking because it's good for your health, generally. It gives you exercise, you get out in the fresh air.
So in July 2023, when Chris and his wife Anne spotted a great deal for a walking holiday in the Scottish Highlands that November, they were keen.
I was looking at the paper and I saw this advertisement from Shearings where it was £1 per person deposit for a trip up to Pitlochry. And I thought, well, if something comes up whereby I can't go on the trip, I've just lost £2, so it was nothing to bother about.
Chris picked up the phone and booked the trip there and then. But the following month, the couple were forced to change their plans and cancel their place on the coach trip. They were quite prepared to write off the £2 deposit. But when Chris called Shearings to cancel, he learned he was on the hook for much more.
He did then advise me that I have to pay the full deposit, which was a £75 per person, minus the £2 that I'd already paid. I said I wasn't aware of this, and he says, oh, well, it is in the terms and conditions.
And it is. We dug it out here on the Shearings website. And when Chris read that as well, he felt he had no choice and paid up the full £148 deposit. But he doesn't think that you should have to go through that and believes a £1 each deposit should simply be just that.
This wasn't made clear to me when I made the booking. I think it's a bit of an underhand way of getting people to book holidays by enticing them with low deposits, knowing full well that these low deposits are just totally worthless if you do cancel.
But low deposits aren't just the reserve of Shearings, far from it. From TUI and Love Holidays to Jet2 Holidays, On the Beach and more. They're used throughout the travel industry as a way to help you secure your spot in the sun without breaking the bank when you first book. It was On the Beach's low deposit that caught the eye of Wayne Eglinton from Camberley in Surrey. One cold December night in 2022, he saw the holiday firm's TV ad touting a tempting deposit of £30 per person, and he had a family treat in mind.
I was on my own and I just thought it'd be nice because this was just before Christmas and I thought it'd be a nice little surprise for the family.
But when he told his wife Jay, daughter Maya and son Aaron about the sunshine trip to Turkey that he'd booked, Wayne was in for a surprise of his own. It clashed with Maya's exams, so all had to be changed.
I went on the online chat and tried to reschedule the holiday. I got an immediate response saying, right, yes, we can reschedule, but the price was just astronomical. I asked them to cancel it and then I logged off, and as far as I was aware, that was it.
He thought he'd just lost his deposit of £30 per person. But a month later, On the Beach were back, charging his bank card for much more than a low deposit.
On the 24th of January, £419.30. On the 25th of January, £314.47. And on the 27th of January, £973.44. So a total of £1,707.21 that I just did not expect to be going out of my account.
Wayne was astonished to discover that On the Beach had taken almost half of the whole cost of the holiday that he thought he had cancelled.
I contacted their customer service online portal and basically got told that it was all in the terms and conditions. We pay the airlines up front and in full for your flights, regardless of whether you are paying for your holiday via our deposit scheme. Most flights are unfortunately non-refundable with the airline, and therefore, in the event of a cancellation, we would not be able to recover any of the flight cost for you. This means whether you placed your order with us 5 minutes ago or 5 months ago, you still need to cover the cost of your flights in full.
But despite all of that, Wayne feels it was a lack of clarity that cost him dearly.
I mean, how can that be right? I mean, I still feel sick the fact that I've lost so much money on a holiday that I never went on.
We spoke to On the Beach and Shearings about Wayne and Chris's cases, and both firms told us that their low deposits allow customers to spread the cost of their holiday in affordable, flexible instalments. And both said that information about payment and cancellations is clearly outlined on their website and in their terms and conditions.
On the Beach said customers are also given this information before they confirm their booking, while Shearings said its booking confirmation clearly states that cancellation will result in customers being charged the full deposit rather than the low deposit.
Shearings told us its cancellation charges are to cover administration costs and lost revenue, as in most instances there's limited time for it to resell a cancelled holiday. On the Beach explained that flights are non-refundable and airlines are paid immediately on booking. But it pointed out that it was able to recoup the costs of Wayne's hotel and transfers.
Joining us now to talk more about this subject is Grace Farrell, travel expert from the consumer group Which. Now, Grace, I do accept this is all in the terms and conditions as to how they work it, but I think it's really unfair.
Yeah, it is unfair because, unfortunately, these low deposit holiday schemes, they're actually a lot more complex than they look at first glance. And so if you don't take the time to read the small print, which, let's be honest, some people don't, then it's easy to get caught out. Now, usually when you go to book a holiday, you're given a few different options for how to pay, and you can spread it over monthly instalments, which can be a really good way of managing your finances. But with this kind of thing, it's fair to assume that the only thing you're going to lose is that initial first deposit, which is low. Then you find out with many firms that that initial first deposit is more like an instalment of a larger deposit.
It's like luring you in.
Yes,
with a pound or 20 quid or something.
Yes, and you'll actually have to pay hundreds, if not thousands of pounds if you want to cancel.
So you've been carrying out with Which a survey into the subject. What did you discover?
Yes, well, we found that with many firms, the policy just isn't clear. It's buried within the terms and conditions. So let's look at the four biggest UK package holiday providers. So we'll start with Love Holidays. Now, on their website, on the landing page, it says that you can secure a holiday for just £25 per person to give you peace of mind, which sounds great. There is no mention on that page of the cancellation policy. And even if you go to book it, you'll get a cost breakdown, which will show you all the different payments, and they're all just called instalments. And it's not clear what's an instalment to the full holiday and what's an instalment to the deposit. And it's a similar story with On the Beach. They charge £30 per person, no mention of the cancellation policy. Again, they have four key questions where this isn't mentioned. During the booking process, they do signpost that cancellation charges may apply, but they give you a link that you have to actively click to get to the full explanation. And we just think there are too many steps before you really find out what you're owing.
Yes, so now we move on to TUI.
Yes, so TUI is a little bit better. If you scroll down, it does say if you book using the low deposit scheme and then cancel your holiday, the remaining deposit balance will be due upon cancellation, with a link to a full explanation. So there is something there, but again, we would like to see this information front and centre when you go to book.
And Jet2?
So Jet2, they do things a bit differently. Their cancellation policy is really clear. Now, they charge £60 per person, so it's a little bit higher than the other ones we've talked about. But they do exactly what they say on the tin. This is all you will lose if you go to cancel, £60. So this is a truly low deposit holiday scheme, which is great.
When we spoke to the tour operators about the terms and conditions of their low deposit offers, On the Beach said that different payment options and payment breakdowns are provided before customers confirm their bookings. And Love Holidays said the information is readily available throughout the booking process. Love Holidays and TUI both stressed how much customers value their low deposit offers. But as a result of this investigation, both firms said they're now reviewing their processes. The other point is, can you actually insure against this kind of thing?
Well, travel insurance, it's there to cover things that are usually out of your control. So if you're ill, you have an accident, there's a natural disaster, you're summoned to jury duty, then that's where it will come in handy. If you just change your mind and you decide you no longer want to go on your holiday, it's unlikely that your travel insurance is going to cover you for that.
What's your end conclusion about what they ought to be doing?
Well, we think it should just be really clear. When you go to book the holiday, they should explain what they actually mean by low deposit, because a reasonable person is going to assume that that is the deposit that you lose if you cancel. So it needs to be much clearer what you'll actually need to pay if you decide to cancel. And we always say, don't rush when you're booking a holiday. Take the time to really understand what you're getting into.
Grace, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, next to an issue that you ask for our help with all the time, getting airlines to pay out the compensation that you're due for lengthy flight delays. The rules on this are crystal clear, and yet many airlines still make a right old song and dance about it. In a moment, we'll be asking the aviation industry regulator why more airlines aren't being brought into line. But first, here's a reminder of just one of the many times we've met holidaymakers who were led a merry dance just to get the compensation they were entitled to all along.
To illustrate just how long we've been on at airlines for taking far too long or even refusing outright to pay the compensation you're due for a delayed flight, we're heading all the way back to 2017, when we met Janet and Les Patman from Middlesex. They'd been battling a claim for delays suffered in 2014, when they flew from Gatwick to Barbados.
We boarded the plane, I think, just after 12 o'clock, and we were excited to get a glass of champagne, and we thought we were ready to go.
But the champagne was finished long before there was any sign of the flight taking off. Cabin crew told passengers that the onboard TVs were broken and that there was a fault with all of the plane's toilets.
Unfortunately, having just had a glass of champagne, lots of us ladies particularly were very keen to start using the toilets that were out of use, but nobody knew why.
The flight eventually took off 90 minutes late, and whilst the TVs had been fixed, the toilets hadn't. Cabin crew told passengers that they were expected to be fixed by the time the plane reached cruising altitude. But when this didn't happen, the captain announced they'd be turning back to the UK, where the loos were repaired on the tarmac.
Of course, everyone by this time needed to go to the toilet. It took, what was it, about another hour?
Yeah, over another hour.
On the tarmac.
Everybody was queuing right down the plane for all the toilets that now were available before we could set off again.
5.5 hours after they should have originally taken off, the plane finally left. And while Janet and Les did have a fantastic holiday, when they got home, they couldn't forget the shaky start that the delayed flight had caused. So they complained to the airline, Thomson, which of course is now TUI. But the airline said compensation wasn't due because the delays had been caused by extraordinary circumstances.
So how could they use that as their get-out clause when that wasn't an extraordinary circumstance? It's not like a hurricane or a tornado.
Well, in 2017, a fresh-faced young travel expert told us that in the face of reasons like that, there was very little comeback for the customer.
There's no real penalty if an airline decides it's going to be really awkward with the passenger. And there is, in each country, a national enforcement body. In Britain, it's the Civil Aviation Authority, but they seem to be fairly toothless in saying to the airlines, look, it's your fault, you've got to pay up.
In the end, it didn't take the involvement of the CAA for Janet and Les to get their compensation. Thomson reviewed the case and paid up. But in the years since that film, we've heard countless more cases of people not getting what they're due, despite the law being tightened in favour of passengers. And some feel they have no choice but to lean on a no-win, no-fee law firm in the hope that they will get the money that should automatically get paid out to them. Joining me now in the studio from one of those firms is solicitor Kobe Benson, along with Paul Smith from the Civil Aviation Authority, the regulator that many say should be doing more to make airlines follow the rules.
I'm going to start, first of all, if I may, Paul, with you. Why aren't the regulators like yourself clamping down on airlines and making sure that they look after passenger rights?
Yes, obviously the experience that the customers in your film have had was an experience nobody would want to go through. And the regulations are very clear that where it is within the airline's control for a delay, then that the compensation is payable in addition to a refund. So where we see that systematically happening, we will take action.
Well, I'll come back to you because there are thousands of them who are still not getting any result from the airlines. And I'd like to turn now to Kobe, to you, because your company is one of the biggest no-win fee solicitors that argue to fight compensation cases. If the CAA were properly enforcing airline compensation regulations, surely you and your company would be out of a job, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. And that's what we'd like to see. The purpose of the regulation should be that passengers can claim this compensation themselves. Unfortunately, though, the airlines have made it extremely difficult ever since the regulation was first incepted almost 20 years ago now.
So what sort of problems do people give to you? How long have they been waiting on average to get some kind of resolution?
There are people who've been waiting certainly months for a response. There are some airlines that just never respond to claims at all. And that's just the stance they take. And that clearly is not right, and enforcement action should be taken against them. And there's also airlines that will respond to the claim, but not in line with the law, and they should be paying out straight away. We have to take the claim to court often, and even then, sometimes airlines still won't pay. Even if we have a piece of paper from the court which says you have to pay this money, sometimes the airlines won't pay up, and we have to send the bailiffs. And again, that's just not good enough. These airlines should just be paying out straight away, but at the moment, there's no incentive for them to do so. There should be more fines.
More fines comes back to you, Paul. Presumably, it is the CAA who would be able to apply those fines to companies. Why do you not use that power that you have more readily?
So we do use the powers where we think there is clear evidence. We also work very actively to make sure passengers understand their rights and understand what they can do to claim compensation.
In 2023, the CAA took enforcement action against Wizz Air after a high volume of complaints about the airline not paying passengers what they're owed.
But I think the Wizz case is important because it does show where there is that failure on a consistent basis, and what Wizz have been required to do by ourselves is go back and look at all of their claims going back to March last year to make sure that they were correct, as well as looking forward and making sure that they've got the right processes in place moving forward.
So what is the authority that you have over those airlines to make them comply to the regulations?
What we try to do is make sure customers are aware of their rights, aware of the access to ADR and the Ombudsman, because they can be the ways in which customers can get their cases resolved appropriately without needing to come to ourselves. And we're very pleased that earlier this year the government has agreed with us and committed to give us additional powers similar to those that other regulators in other sectors have. So that would allow us to take action more quickly when there are issues, but also give us greater ability to use financial penalties where airlines are not delivering.
Well, I hope that any of our viewers that find themselves in that position will in fact get in touch with you at the CAA and trigger that response from you to those airlines. But in the meantime, Paul Smith and Kobe Benson, thank you both very much indeed for joining us.
When we spoke to Wizz Air about the CAA's enforcement action, it told us it's made several commitments regarding the handling of flight delay claims, invested more than £90 million in improving operations, and now aims to process all ticket refunds within 7 working days. Wizz Air pointed out that in the first half of 2023, more than 90% of refunds and delay claims were processed within 5 days, and 85% of CCJs were resolved.
I'm afraid that's where we have to leave it for today. I do hope you picked up plenty of advice on how to make sure that wherever your next holiday takes you, it goes without a hitch.
If, however, things don't go to plan, do please let us know. You could even take our email address on holiday with you and drop us a line from the side of the pool. You never know, we might be able to help fix things before you come home.
Just one more important thing that you have to remember to pack. And the address, as if you actually needed a reminder, is ripoffbritain@bbc.co.uk. Well, until we see you again, thanks so much for joining us today. And from everyone here on the Rip Off Britain team, enjoy your day. Goodbye.
Goodbye.